welcome back to WCB Jazz Vinyl. So I just got back from a trip to Japan, and while I acknowledge that this channel is not a travel blog, I did squeeze in a trip to a record store. I also visited a couple of the jazz kissas or listening bars, so I thought I'd make a quick video and just kind of tell you about how that went and show you a couple of the records that I picked up as well. So before we begin, YouTube makes it easy to subscribe to channels. You can do so by clicking on the white button that says subscribe right below this video, or you can click on the little like red subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner. So go ahead and do that, and let's just dive in. So I'd planned my first video coming back from Japan to actually be about my new label's release of Pepper Adams Quintet, because it just came out on last Friday, October 24th. But you're going to have to wait just a couple more days. I'll be filming that on Thursday. In the meantime, head over to www.gamut.com and check it out. All right, so anyway, I did just get back from Japan. Had a phenomenal time. I always love visiting that country. I don't go as often as I'd like, so the last time that I went was in 2019, so right before the pandemic. Time before that was 2012. I also went in 2010 and actually lived there for some years, sort of bridging elementary and middle school. So Japan is really a place that I have a lot of nostalgia for because of all the time that I've spent there, all the time traveling around the country. I do speak some Japanese. I can read some as well, and it sure makes it easier to travel that country and honestly just get into the places that you want to get into if you have a little bit of speaking ability. There's a few places that I went to where the owners would sort of clarify, really even before like allowing you in, like they'd ask me in Japanese, like, can you speak Japanese? And I don't think it's they're trying to exclude certain customers. I think it's more that if they don't have the ability to sort of come to the table with a little bit of English, if they don't have English menus, if they're not going to be able to help you, then it's kind of awkward to have somebody come in and struggle and not know, what to do. So in any event, for anybody who's considering maybe get into Duolingo and try to pick up a little bit of the language, sure, it certainly helps. So again, I know that this isn't a travel blog, but traveling to Japan is a little bit of a soapbox for me, because so many people, when they go to Tokyo and they go to Kyoto, and that's it. And by and large, they spend most of their time in Tokyo. And I just think the country has so much more to offer. Like, obviously, if you're interested in jazz and vinyl, subject typically of this channel, then yeah, Tokyo's the best place to go. But just to have like a good time in Japan, or even a more like sort of holistic experience, I just think you have to be a little bit braver than that. So just to kind of orient you, I guess, at least on what I did for my trip, and each trip that I take is very different. But this time, flew into Tokyo, spent a couple of days there, headed to Miyajima, which is a very small island, sort of near Hiroshima. Miyajima is not really, I guess, the sort of technical name for the. This is more of like the colloquial name, I guess, for what they call this island. But I'll show it to you here on a map. So spent a couple of days there. Absolutely gorgeous scenery. If it's known for anything, it's this torii gate that's out in the water that's sort of surrounded by the ocean. It's kind of one of these like iconic images, I think, of Japan that maybe people don't always go visit, because it is a little bit of a trek to get all the way out there. But there's plenty to do on that island. So if you're sort of following me, starting in Tokyo, then heading all the way to the other side of the main island of Honshu, and then we worked our way back. So we went to Onamichi next, which was really underrated place, I thought. Like, I'd never been there in my life, out of all the times that I visited, and that was a highlight, really. And then we stopped in Himeji. Then it was Osaka, then Hakone, and back to Tokyo. So kind of a linear sort of trip. And because I was traveling so much by train, I really didn't want to be picking up a bunch of records early in the trip. So I sort of left the shopping for the tail end. And so that's kind of what I'm going to get into next. Really is more about the vinyl, because I think that's what people tune in here for. So keep in mind with this trip, we had a group of 4 in total. So me and 3 others. This was not a, Chris jazz records trip whatsoever. Okay. Like I know it seems like, especially on YouTube, when vinyl collectors go to Japan, they spend their entire time in Tokyo record stores. But that was like the furthest of what this trip was about. But I certainly wasn't going to ignore the fact that you that there's some great stores. So in fact, over the course of 12 days in Japan, I was only able to visit a single record store. However, I think it was, like the best record store for jazz, at least in my opinion, of the places that I've been to. And in just 30 minutes, I walked out with a handful of really stellar titles at great prices. So, so in more detail, right? So the store in question is Disc Union, of course, and specifically, I visited one of their Shinjuku locations that seems to specialize in jazz. I think that there's a number of Disc Union locations, even just within the Shinjuku area. Some people online have said that there's a handful. Somebody claimed that there's like 19 of them. I'm not going to pretend to know what their entire footprint looks like or what they consider a store, because it's possible, because each floor of some of these Disc Union buildings, you're obligated to like check out your purchases on that floor before you move to another floor. So I don't know if they're like double counting some of these buildings. But regardless, Shinjuku does happen to be a great area to visit Disc Union locations, because two of the most sort of jazz focused locations are in that area. So one is called the sort of Disc Union Shinjuku Jazz Museum is basically what it's called, and then the other is Shinjuku Jazz and Rare Groove. So as far as I can tell, those are kind of the two big ones. I went to the former, so the Jazz Museum. So how this particular location is laid out. Floor one, so when you enter, is meant to sort of appeal to everyone, it seems. So it has all genres, but certainly some fantastic jazz. In fact, most of what I found was actually on that first floor, funnily enough. But then there's actually a jazz dedicated floor to their store as well, which has an absolute ton of records, again, in all jazz. They lay it out very differently, though, than most stores, at least in the US, in terms of this. They organize by label, and then they organize by instrument played by the leader. But they don't like overlap those organizational methods. So major labels will have their own sections. So think Blue Note, Prestige, but even like Bethlehem and Mode had their own like separate sections, almost like how I organize around here. But then they had a more general section of music that wasn't those labels, where they organized by the instrument. So for example, you'd go to the alto sax section in order to find a Sonny Stitt record, right? So otherwise they have some of their most valuable records on the wall, as a lot of record stores do. The grading system at Disc Union is a little different. You kind of have to get used to it. So their grading system, as far as I could tell, is either A, B, or C. But then there's like nuances within each of those gradings. So as far as I could tell, A was like mint, like basically like new or mint, and very few records were given an A. In fact, nothing that I really picked up even qualified as being an A. Most of the records are in the B and C range. And from what I can tell, this grading system is not at all linear. So if very little is in A, basically B is maybe VG plus plus down to, call it like maybe a little bit better than VG, maybe. And then C is trashed. Like as far as I could tell, like I picked up a couple of things and I was like, oh, they have this rare George Wallington on progressive or whatever. In fact, they had that. And it was a C grading. And I looked at the price and I was like, oh, like maybe if this is playable, then I could justify spending $200. And I looked at the condition and it was wrecked. So Disc Union seems to, I mean, don't get me wrong, like you can, it's all up to the customer whether you decide it's worth the price that they're charging. But from what I could tell, you didn't even want to look at the C's. The A's you couldn't even find, and everything else was kind of in that in sort of that B range. So one of the things that you'll hear from folks who have visited Disc Union is probably going to be related to the pricing. And I wanted to say a couple things about that. So first of all, the exchange rate happens to be very favorable right now for people from the U.S. visiting Japan. So when I lived in Japan, the exchange rate was something like this. So it was something like 10,000 yen which is just sort of an even unit of measure, was equivalent to about $130 when I lived there. We're talking like early 90s. I may be wrong, but I think it was something like that, or like $125. So in order to buy 10,000 yen, you needed $125. When I visited, it was $66 what would buy you 10,000 yen. So strength of the dollar was very good, and that meant that a lot of things on this trip were very inexpensive. Not everything, like certainly the flight wasn't, right. Like those things are sort of it's a commoditized market. It's not really based on one country's, even the destination country's currency rate or anything like that. But something like a beer was like $3, or a nice glass of whiskey at a listening bar was like $7 or $8, right? So things were cheaper, simply because of the strength of the dollar. The other thing though that I noticed is that even if Disc Union is known for being expensive, from what I could tell, they're more expensive for the more popular labels. So when I go to Japan and I visit Disc Union, I'm not looking for Blue Note. You know what I mean? Like don't get me wrong, if there's something there and it's a good price and I don't have it, then maybe I'd go for it. But that wasn't exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for Japanese jazz, and I listen to and I have a bunch of Japanese jazz, and a lot of times the only way to get it into the United States is by ordering it from Disc Union online, or one of these other retail stores online who are based in Japan, and then spending $20 to $30 to bring it into the U.S. And lately, with all of these kind of tariff issues, and certain countries, posts not handing over packages to the USPS, and all of these different issues, like it's just become a little bit more difficult. So I wanted to take the opportunity to look for some Japanese jazz, and this particular location of Disc Union really delivered. And again, I was not there for very long. I didn't have that much time. Okay, like I could have spent I could have spent the entire 10 days just going to record stores, but instead I had like 30 minutes on the second to last day that I was there. So, that being said, what I did get, I was very happy to buy, and it was very cheap. Like each of these records were at least like between $30 and $50 cheaper than what I would have to pay if I was ordering it from the United States. So, so yeah, so I was excited about that. So the first one, now I'm going to show you records. How about that? And then I'll talk. I'll tell you a little bit about the listening bars that I went to as well. So the first one I picked up. This is Mina's second theme, and the leader is Yosuke Yamashita, piano player, and it's a trio. It's piano, tenor sax, and drums. One of the reasons why this jumped out at me was because there's like a Japanese jazz book that I believe was pressed by BBE, Barely Breaking Even. They've been reissuing a bunch of sort of obscure Japanese jazz albums, and they decided to put out a book a couple of years ago, and I picked it up. And one that kind of stuck with me was Mina's second theme, and I think the reason is because of the kind of creepy image. But I was just excited to. I've never come across this in the United States. You'd have to buy it online. One thing you'll note, if you're like kind of an expert, you may pick this out immediately. But this obi right here is actually corresponding with an early reissue. So this is not a first pressing, but still a record that I was super happy to get. This one was graded B, which according to their little price sticker correlated with the VG++. That's about what the grading is. So anyway, I haven't actually listened to all these yet, so I can't say that much about the music. But my guess is that maybe each of these are going to be, or maybe each but one are going to be brand new records to you potentially. Or at the very least, maybe one or two of them will be things you haven't seen before. This is a little bit more of an obscure one, I would say, simply because it's not on, it's not, this one's on JVC, like it's not on one of their like sort of major, labels. So, at least in terms of what jazz people in the US buy from Japan anyway. So that's that one. Moving to a more common label, East Wind. The next one I picked up is by Teru Masahino, and apologies, the obi's kind of covering some of this, right? But it's "Speak to Loneliness" is the name of the record. Again, originally put out on East Wind, and I'm a Teru Masahino fan for sure. especially when it's kind of like before his disco sort of pop music era. There's a lot of really good stuff, even when he's playing some kind of avant-garde stuff. Although he doesn't always do that. But this one is in a quintet lineup at times, and then they on certain tracks they kind of add to it. But I'm kind of an anything by Teru Masahino kind of person, provided again it falls in that sort of the right sort of genre. So never owned a copy of that and was excited to find that. Next one, I'm really into Three Blind Mice. I collect Three Blind Mice. I have a ton of records from that label, and one that I've only thus far been able to own a modern reissue of. I think it was a Craftsman reissue. Is this? It's Girl Talk. So I was able to get this for pretty cheap, and I can't actually recall exactly how much this was, but it was not expensive. I think the reason is because it lacks the obi, and a lot of Japanese collectors want the full package. They want the insert, they want the obi, and they want everything in pristine shape. Fortunately, this is an original pressing, and it's in great shape, just missing the obi, and so I was able to get this for significantly less. So I have heard that one, but excited to have an original pressing. So this next one was a very interesting one for a couple of reasons. So this is One for Lady by Kimiko Kasai and Mal Waldron. So Mal Waldron was doing a lot of records in Japan, a lot of recording in Japan because he was simply appreciated there, probably more than in the U.S., especially towards the end of his career. And the reason why this caught my eye certainly was because of Mal Waldron. And and maybe otherwise I wouldn't have gravitated towards it, but I took a brief look at it, and a couple of things sort of popped out. One is the white label. So this is a promotional copy, promotional original copy, because this has been reissued a number of times, and you can get it actually for like, I think one of the later reissues in the U.S. you could probably get for like $10 or something. But this is an original Japanese pressing, and again promo. So that's one of the two things. The other, and sorry, I'm taking this out of the sort of sticky wrap right now. The other thing is what I saw in the back, and that is this. So it says "Domo Domo," which means sort of thank you, thank you, Mal Waldron. Now, when I first saw this and all this white space, I'm like, oh, surely that was just printed. That was just printed on this. It's on all of them. It's made to look like a real signature, but it's not. That's a real signature. And I thought it was great that it's a Japanese record. He uses sort of English, but Japanese words, and then signed his name. And I don't know. I like, and that this was like the equivalent of $20. So a number of compelling reasons to buy it, and I actually have listened to some of this already, and I really like it. I think it sounds great. So yeah, so I was pretty excited about that, and I mean I assume that Disc Union was doing a good job kind of taking a look at things. So I assume that they caught that it was signed, and maybe they just didn't have value for it. I don't know. Um, so the last one, I only picked up these 5 records. Five. Um, so the last one is actually kind of going against what I had said earlier about me only being interested in Japanese records. So because my label is releasing Pepper Adams Quintet, a reissue, I immediately went to the Mode Records section just to see what they had. And guess what? They had an original pressing of Pepper Adams Quintet. I have an original pressing already. My copy is in like VG-ish condition, and so I was interested to see if I could get an upgrade here. And yes, this is an upgrade. It was about $35, I think, the equivalent of $35 to get this. It would be more expensive in the US. So very interesting to me that maybe for some of these lesser, some of the labels with lower desirability, perhaps you can get still for deals at Disc Union in Tokyo. So I just thought it would be fun to have an original mono that was in a little bit better shape. Maybe then I could do a more thorough shootout for the for my own label's release, and do a video on that, and kind of maybe talk about it. But it was also very fitting because I was in Japan leading up to the release of this record, and it seemed like it was like meant to be, if you will, that I would find an original pressing at Disc Union in Japan of this very record. So yeah, that's number five. All right, so the final topic is listening bars. So, similar to my experience with the one record store that I went to, didn't have much time to be going to a ton of these jazz kissas. However, while I was in Osaka, actually, is where I visited a couple of them on consecutive nights. So I wanted to just highlight those two really briefly. So the first one that we visited was actually by accident. So I just plugged into to Google, I think, and I was trying to remember what some of the names of the kissas or the listening bars that had been recommended to me, and so just through a quick Google search, I came sort of across Bird 56 as being one that kind of focuses a little bit in the jazz space, and was very sort of noteworthy. I think it was established in like the 70s, like maybe the early 70s, and had been, running since then in the same location. And so I believe in the same location. So I really wanted to check that one out. So I went to Bird 56 one night while I was in Osaka. Knocked not didn't knock on the door. I entered and it was very crowded. So there was not many seats, but I couldn't quite see if any were open or not. But the thing is, when you go to Japan and you walk into a bar, you don't just sit down. It's very rude to do that. So you're always supposed to kind of check in with somebody and say like, hey, this is how many people I have. Can you accommodate that kind of thing? Nothing will get you thrown out quicker than just sitting down. So I did that. I spoke with them briefly, and they said sorry, we're full. And so the other thing is you don't stand around inside and wait for a seat to open up. This is not America, so they just do things differently. So I knew when they said, "Oh, sorry, we can't accommodate," that meant sorry, better go home or come back significantly later and maybe check in again and see if they have any availability. So instead, what I did is I noticed as I was walking up to Bird 56, we passed by another bar that, to be honest, didn't look nearly as welcoming, but it was on the floor below. It was called Top Rank. And the reason why it didn't look as welcoming is because there were signs all over the door and next to the door that basically said, if you don't have an appreciation for, like great music and if like then you know not interested in your business kind of thing. And it was basically like it said in even in English it was written out. It's basically said, I like people with money who like to spend money on good music and good whiskey. And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And so I passed by it on the way up to Bird 56, but after getting rejected, went right back down to Top Rank. And this is a place that's been around since the early 80s with the same owner ever since then, still there, single proprietor, anyway, as we walked in, there was no one there, but there was really good music playing. So they were playing the Johnny Hartman, John Coltrane record, and as soon as I heard that, I was like, I don't care, whether this bar is good or whether it isn't. I'm gonna stay, have a drink, and listen to this music right now. And fortunately, and despite the fact that we were the only ones there, we had a fantastic time. And the owner was quiet, but he was very nice. We were able to order a very nice whiskey, didn't have to spend a lot of money. Yes, there is a small fee that you have to pay in order to just get seated in any of these places, regardless of, you're always going to have to order a drink, but you're also going to have to pay kind of like just like a couple of bucks or maybe $5 or something to have a seat. So you kind of have to know that. um, but we had a great time, and I was able to kind of walk around the place. Very small, like this place couldn't accommodate more than I don't know, maybe like 12 or 15 people in total. Small chairs, very cramped kind of situation, but that's kind of what you want, I think, for a lot of these places, especially in Osaka. So Osaka seems to do the small format bar even better than Tokyo, I think, and I think it's because they feel grungier, they feel more authentic, like they've been there longer, probably because they have. So anyway, Top Rank was great. Ended up having a couple of drinks there. The following night, decided, you know what, we struck out last night at Bird 56. Let's try to go back. And sure enough, we went earlier in the day. They open around 5, and I think we went around like 6:30 or 7. And we were able to get seated immediately. It was not too crowded. Great drinks in terms of cocktails. They served us snacks. Um, and it was fantastic. They played Miles Davis and Sonny Rollins and you know a bunch of stuff that I was intimately familiar with. But it was just nice to be in some of these places and listen to music on a really nice setup in you know again sort of intimate environment. Um, and yeah, so I you know I'm not gonna pretend that I'm the expert on these listening bars in Japan, but every time I go, I do try to find you know a couple. I'm not trying to find all of them or anything you know anything like that. It's more of you know what's convenient. Can I squeeze it in? But I was very happy to go to both Top Rank as well as Bird 56, both for the first time, and honestly, both will be on my list for the next time that I go to Japan as well. All right, so that's sort of my update on this trip to Japan. Probably not as exciting as maybe some folks wanted who wanted to hear me talk about going to, you know, dozens of record stores and here's the best ones to go to and all of that, or running down all of the listening bars that are in Japan. But you know, let's be real. I go to Japan for a variety of reasons, and I don't want to be carting records all over the country. Just getting those 5 records back, putting them in my suitcase was enough of a chore to not damage them. I can't imagine people who just shop at record stores because I could do that. I could form a whole trip around that, and I'd probably come back broke. So you know, I think with those 5 records, I might have spent $150 total. So I sort of I don't know. I counted the experience as a big win. Um, so thanks very much, I guess, for everyone who stuck with me. And again, rest assured, my next video will be on the brand new release, Pepper Adams Quintet, by the label that me and a fellow collector started. Can't wait to tell you more about it. So thanks very much. I'll see you next time.